The challenging encounter. It was a peaceful morning on Earth, the kind of day that felt calm and reassuring. But on the far side of the galaxy, things were not as peaceful. A fleet of alien ships, led by the powerful warlord Zorath, was approaching Earth's orbit. For Zorath, this was more than just a conquest. It was a statement. He believed that Earth was nothing but a primitive, insignificant planet. The humans, with their small ships and limited technology, were no match for the might of his armada. As Zorath's fleet entered the solar system, the alarm systems on Earth's defense stations blared to life. The humans had never encountered such a large and aggressive force before, but they were not afraid. Commander Lucas Monroe, leader of Earth's military forces, stood on the bridge of the Defender, Earth's most advanced warship. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the incoming enemy fleet. "They don't know who they're dealing with," Monroe muttered to himself. His voice was calm, but there was a fire in his heart. He had heard of Zorath before. The alien warlord had been known to destroy entire civilizations with ease. But this time, it would be different. This time, Earth would not go down quietly. Monroe turned to his team of officers. "Prepare the fleet for battle. We are not backing down. This is our home, and we will fight for it." The officers nodded, their faces serious. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew one thing for sure. Humanity had a spirit unlike any other species in the galaxy. If anyone could fight back, it was Earth. Zorath's fleet approached with terrifying speed. The ships were massive, their dark silhouettes casting long shadows across the stars. Each ship was heavily armed, ready to destroy anything in its path. The alien warlord was confident that his fleet would crush the humans in minutes. After all, Earth had no history of war with advanced species. They were a young, untested civilization. But what Zorath didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this moment. Monroe and his team had been working for years to develop new weapons and strategies. They had been studying the stars, learning from the mistakes of other civilizations, and quietly building a fleet that was more powerful than anyone could imagine. The Defender was one of those ships. It was equipped with cutting-edge technology, including energy shields that could withstand intense firepower and weapons capable of disabling enemy ships in seconds. And it wasn't just the Defender. Earth had a whole fleet of ships ready to defend the planet. It was the result of years of research and collaboration between the brightest minds on Earth. The first wave of alien ships fired their weapons as soon as they came into range. Brilliant beams of light shot through space, heading straight for Earth's defenses. The humans responded immediately. Earth's ships, though smaller in size, were faster and more maneuverable. They dodged the alien blasts with surprising agility, returning fire with deadly accuracy. The battle was on. Monroe's voice came through the intercom, steady and commanding. "All ships, focus on the enemy's lead ship. Take it down first." As the humans closed in on Zorath's lead ship, the alien forces fired again. But this time, the humans were ready. The Defender deployed its energy shields just in time, absorbing the incoming fire. The alien ships couldn't match the human speed and precision. Earth's fighters danced through the debris, weaving in and out of the enemy's line of fire, their weapons striking with pinpoint accuracy. Zorath watched in disbelief as his ships were taken down one by one. His superior fleet, which he had believed would annihilate Earth in a matter of minutes, was faltering. His anger grew as he realized that the humans weren't just defending their planet. They were fighting back with a ferocity he had never expected. "How is this possible?" Zorath growled. "They are mere insects compared to us." But Monroe knew better. He had expected the aliens to underestimate humanity, and now they were paying the price for that mistake. The humans had no intention of surrendering. This was their home, their world, and they would defend it with everything they had. As the first wave of alien ships began to retreat, Zorath made a decision. He wasn't going to give up. He would call for reinforcements, and, if necessary, he would destroy Earth's fleet piece by piece. He would show these humans the true meaning of power. Retreat. "No," Zorath barked. "We will crush them. Call in the second wave. And prepare the Nova Cannon. We end this now." Back on Earth, Monroe knew that the battle had only just begun. The first wave had been defeated, but he knew the real fight was yet to come. Zorath's reinforcements were on their way, and the humans had to be ready. There was no turning back now. "We've got this," Monroe said to his team, determination in his voice. "We'll show them what Earth is capable of." But deep inside, he knew that the war they were about to face would test everything. It would test their strength, their courage, and their very will to survive. And the consequences of this war, win or lose, would change the galaxy forever. The humans had just declared war on the wrong species. The first wave of alien ships had retreated, but the humans knew the battle was far from over. Commander Lucas Monroe stood on the bridge of the Defender, his face grim but determined. The sight of the alien ships retreating had given them a small victory, but the alien warlord, Zorath, was not one to back down easily. He had already called for reinforcements, and the humans had no time to relax. Monroe stared at the large screen in front of him, where the red dots of incoming ships were rapidly approaching. "Second wave incoming," he muttered, his voice steady, but laced with tension. The officers around him didn't need any more instructions. They were ready. They had fought through the first wave, but this next challenge would be even harder. The alien ships were massive and heavily armed. Zorath was not going to make the same mistake again. He would use everything in his power to destroy Earth. "Captain, we have a problem," Lieutenant Sarah Evans said, looking up from her station. "The Nova Cannon is charging. If we don't stop it soon, Earth's defenses won't stand a chance." Monroe's eyes widened. The Nova Cannon was Zorath's most dangerous weapon, capable of destroying entire fleets with a single blast. If it fired, the human ships wouldn't stand a chance. The Defender was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. "We can't let them fire that weapon," Monroe said, his voice sharp. "Get me a course to intercept the cannon." Lieutenant Evans worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. "I'm setting a course, but we'll have to get close. They'll try to destroy us before we even reach the cannon." "Do whatever it takes," Monroe ordered. "We can't let Earth fall. This is our last chance." The human ships sped toward the alien fleet, weaving through debris and enemy fire. The Defender's shields held firm as blasts from the alien ships ricocheted off its surface. The crew worked in perfect harmony, responding to the chaos with skill and precision. Outside, the alien ships began to position themselves into a defensive formation around the Nova Cannon. They knew the humans would try to destroy it, and they were ready to fight back. Zorath's ships were armed to the teeth, with energy beams and missiles waiting to unleash their fury. "We need to get through their defenses," Captain Monroe said, his eyes narrowing as the Defender moved closer to the enemy fleet. "Evans, can you disable their shields?" "I'll try," Evans replied, her fingers moving over the controls. "But the energy required is enormous. It will take time." Time was something they didn't have. Zorath's fleet was closing in fast, and the Nova Cannon was almost ready to fire. Monroe knew they needed a distraction, something that would pull the alien ships away long enough for them to disable the cannon. He thought quickly. "Deploy the decoy drones. We'll draw their fire and buy us a few extra minutes." Evans nodded, working quickly to launch the small drones. Hundreds of them shot out from the Defender, scattering in every direction. The drones were equipped with heat signatures and energy signatures that mimicked the human ships. They wouldn't be able to last long, but they would do the job, at least for a while. The alien fleet took the bait. Zorath's ships fired relentlessly at the decoys, the explosions lighting up the dark expanse of space. For a few precious minutes, the Defender and the rest of Earth's fleet were able to close in on the Nova Cannon. But as they neared, the alien warlord realized what was happening. "They're trying to destroy the cannon," Zorath shouted. "Focus all fire on the human ships. Do not let them get close." It was too late. Monroe's ships had already reached the edge of the alien formation. The Defender moved in with incredible speed, its engines roaring as it approached the Nova cannon. The alien ships tried to pivot and adjust, but the humans were too quick. The Defender fired its laser cannons, disabling one of the enemy ships, causing a chain reaction that ripped through the fleet. "Now," Monroe shouted. Evans pushed a button, and the Defender's powerful ion torpedoes flew straight for the Nova cannon. The impact was massive, shaking the very fabric of space itself. The cannon's shields flickered for a moment before failing completely. The weapon's massive charge began to overload, causing a devastating explosion that sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. Zorath's face twisted in rage as he watched the destruction unfold. "No, you fools," he screamed. "Do you think this will stop me?" But the damage was done. The Nova cannon was destroyed, and Earth's fleet had made a major dent in Zorath's forces. The alien warlord had underestimated the humans once again. The battle was far from over, but now Earth had the upper hand. Monroe let out a relieved sigh. The fight wasn't over, but they had won a major victory. "We've done it," he said quietly. "We've given ourselves a fighting chance." But as the Defender pulled away from the wreckage, a chilling message came through the communication channels. "This war is far from over." Zorath's voice crackled through the speakers. "You may have destroyed my Nova cannon, but you've only just awakened the true power of my fleet. Prepare yourselves for what's to come." Monroe's heart sank. The real war had just begun. The destruction of the Nova cannon had been a victory, but it was short-lived. As the humans took a moment to regroup, they knew that Zorath wasn't the type to give up easily. His words echoed in Commander Monroe's mind. "You've only just awakened the true power of my fleet." The Defender floated in the silence of space, surrounded by the wreckage of the alien ships that had been destroyed in the explosion. The crew worked quickly, tending to their systems and ensuring that the ship was still operational, but there was no time to celebrate. Zorath would come for them with everything he had. Monroe paced on the bridge, deep in thought. "We need to move," he said. "Now." Lieutenant Sarah Evans looked up from her station. "What do you suggest, sir? We can't stay here for long. Zorath is going to send everything he's got after us." Monroe nodded grimly. "I know. We need to figure out where he's going next. I'm betting he's after Earth, and we can't let him get there." The Defender wasn't alone. Earth's fleet had other ships, but they were scattered across the galaxy, each dealing with different alien threats. It was crucial to coordinate to prevent Zorath from taking advantage of the situation. "Get me the fleet command," Monroe ordered. Evans tapped on the controls, connecting him to the fleet's central command. The face of Fleet Commander Grace Mitchell appeared on the screen. Her face was hard, but there was a sense of urgency in her eyes. "Monroe, you better have good news," she said. "What's the status of the Nova cannon?" "It's gone," Monroe replied. "But Zorath is still out there, and he's angry." "I figured as much," Mitchell said. "I'm sending reinforcements. We need to link up and head to Earth, but we don't know exactly where Zorath is hiding yet." Monroe glanced at the star map on the main screen. The area around Earth was clear, but the alien fleet could be anywhere. Zorath had a reputation for disappearing into the shadows of space, using unpredictable tactics to keep his enemies on edge. They couldn't afford to wait too long. "We'll head to Earth, but we can't do it alone," Monroe said. "We need to track Zorath's fleet before they can make their move." "Understood. Stay in touch," Mitchell said before the screen went dark. Monroe turned to Evans. "Start scanning the area. Zorath won't be far." For the next several hours, the Defender and the rest of Earth's fleet moved cautiously through the vastness of space, searching for any sign of the alien warlord. The tension in the air was thick. Every officer on the bridge knew what was at stake. If Zorath made it to Earth, it could mean the end of humanity as they knew it. Finally, Evans spoke up. "I've got a reading. It's faint, But it's there. The fleet is still in the vicinity, Commander. Can you get a visual? Monroe asked. Evans worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. After a moment, the large screen in front of them flickered, and a cluster of enemy ships appeared, slowly coming into view. They were spread out in a wide formation, but it was clear that they were not on a direct course for Earth. They were preparing for something. That's Zoreth's fleet, Monroe said, his voice steady. They're regrouping. Do we attack? Asked one of the officers. Monroe hesitated. The last battle had taken a lot out of Earth's forces. A direct attack now could cost them everything. They needed to be strategic. No, Monroe said finally. We wait. We let them come to us. The Defender and the rest of Earth's ships hid in the shadows of a nearby asteroid field, making themselves as invisible as possible. Zoreth's ships passed by without noticing, and Monroe held his breath, praying they wouldn't be spotted. But it wasn't long before the alien ships turned around. The scan had picked up their position. They know we're here, Evans said, her voice tinged with fear. They found us. Zoreth's fleet was closing in fast. It was time to face them head-on. Prepare for battle. Monroe barked. Activate all weapons and shields. The crew rushed to their stations, their movements quick and purposeful. The Defender powered up its weapons systems, and the shields shimmered to life. They were ready, but they knew this would be a fight for survival. Suddenly, a loud voice came over the comms. You cannot hide from me forever, humans. I am Zoreth, and your time is up. It was Zoreth himself, broadcasting directly to the Defender. His cold, cruel laughter filled the bridge. You've made a grave mistake, Zoreth continued. I'll enjoy crushing you all. Monroe clenched his fists. This was the moment they had been dreading, the moment they would have to face the full wrath of Zoreth's fleet. Open fire, Monroe shouted. The battle began. The deafening roar of the Defender's weapons filled the space around them, signaling the beginning of a battle that would determine humanity's fate. Zoreth's fleet had been closing in fast, and now they were on top of Earth's ships. This wasn't just another skirmish, it was a full-scale war. Monroe stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the enemy fleet. They were outnumbered, and the odds were stacked against them. His fingers gripped the command console as the Defender shook with the force of enemy fire. The shields flickered, struggling to hold as the alien weapons pounded against them. We need more firepower, Monroe shouted. Lieutenant Evans was already on it. She tapped frantically at her station, sending commands to the nearby ships in their fleet. We've got reinforcements coming, but it's going to take a minute before they're in range, she reported. The tension in the air was thick as the first wave of enemy fighters swooped in, their sleek ships darting through space like deadly predators. Earth's fleet had the advantage of sheer power, but Zoreth's forces were fast and relentless. Each shot from the alien ships cracked through the black void, leaving trails of fiery explosions in their wake. Brace for impact, Monroe ordered. The Defender lurched forward as a blast from an alien warship hit their port side. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the lights flickered. Crew members scrambled to put out fires and restore the damaged systems. We've lost auxiliary power, reported Chief Engineer Roberts. I can reroute some systems, but we're going to be slow to react for a while. Monroe clenched his jaw. Time was running out. They couldn't afford to wait for reinforcements. Zoreth's fleet was closing in with every passing second. We need to make our own luck, Monroe muttered, thinking quickly. He turned to Evans. Initiate evasive maneuvers. We'll use the asteroid field as cover and strike when they're distracted. Evans nodded, immediately sending the commands to the navigation system. The Defender veered sharply to the right, darting towards a nearby asteroid field. The ship weaved between the massive rocks, dodging blasts from Zoreth's fleet. But the alien ships were quick to adjust, their weapons tracking the Defender's every move. The crew fought desperately to hold off the alien assault. The ship's weapons fired in rapid succession, tearing through the alien lines. One ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, but there were too many more behind it. "This isn't enough," Evans yelled over the noise of the battle. "They're surrounding us." The human fleet was outnumbered, and the battle was not going in their favor. Zorath's ships were maneuvering around the asteroids with ease, cutting off any hope of escape. It was clear that Zorath had anticipated this tactic. Monroe's mind raced. They couldn't hold out much longer. He had to act fast. That's when he saw it, a glimmer of hope. A lone alien ship, separated from the rest, appeared to be fleeing the battle. It was an odd thing to see, especially with Zorath's aggressive nature, but Monroe knew an opportunity when he saw one. "Lock onto that ship," he commanded. "Take it out." The Defender adjusted its course, aiming all weapons at the fleeing alien ship. They fired with all their remaining power. The first blast missed, but the second struck true, shattering the alien ship's shields and sending it spiraling into space. "Direct hit," Evans cheered. "That ship won't be a problem anymore." Monroe wasn't celebrating yet. They had to stay focused. But then, as the alien ship exploded, he saw something that made his heart sink. A new fleet of enemy ships, larger and more powerful than anything they had faced so far, appeared on the horizon. "They've called in reinforcements," Evans said grimly. Monroe felt the weight of the situation settle heavily on him. The battle was far from over. In fact, it had just escalated to a level he hadn't anticipated. Zorath wasn't going to let them win. This was no longer a fight for survival. It was a fight for humanity's very existence. "We can't back down now," Monroe said, his voice steady. "We need to keep pushing forward. Earth's survival depends on it." He turned to the crew, his eyes meeting theirs. "Prepare for the next wave. This is our moment. We will not lose this fight." The Defender had taken a beating, but it wasn't finished yet. The crew knew that Zorath's fleet was vast, but the heart of humanity burned stronger than anything they had ever faced before. With each attack, they pushed back harder. The tide of the battle might be turning in favor of the enemy, but Monroe knew one thing: humanity would fight to the very last breath. The battle raged on, each moment bringing the crew closer to their breaking point. But in the distance, Earth's reinforcements finally arrived, their ships flashing into view just in time to support the Defender and turn the tide of battle in their favor. It wasn't over yet, but there was hope. And in the heart of this war, hope was a weapon stronger than any enemy they could face. The battle in space had reached a breaking point. The crew aboard the Defender was exhausted, their minds pushed to the edge as the relentless fire of Zorath's fleet continued to pound them. Despite their best efforts, the odds had been stacked against them. Their shields flickered and the hull groaned under the pressure. Monroe knew they couldn't hold out much longer unless something drastic changed. That's when the reinforcements arrived. At first, it was a faint flicker on the edge of the sensors, just a shadow in the darkness of space. Then it grew brighter, more defined, until the unmistakable silhouette of a massive fleet came into view. Earth's ships, ready for war, had finally entered the fray. "Earth's reinforcements have arrived," Evans shouted, a hint of relief in her voice. She could feel the tension in the air begin to shift. Monroe's heart skipped a beat. The timing was perfect, but they couldn't afford to waste a single moment. The alien fleet had already regrouped, and now they were facing an even more formidable enemy, one that was ready to finish what they started. "Engage the enemy," Monroe barked. "We've got one shot at this. We need to hit them hard and fast." The Defender veered into position, its weapon systems charged and ready. As the reinforcements joined the battle, Earth's fleet was no longer outnumbered. They now had the upper hand, and Monroe wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. "Target their flagship," Monroe commanded. The flagship was at the heart of Zorath's forces, and if they could take it down, it would send a powerful message. The Defender's weapons locked on, and with a powerful blast, the first shot rang out. The alien flagship's shields flared brightly before collapsing under the force of the blast. A massive explosion followed, and the flagship was rocked, losing control. Zoreth's forces hesitated for a brief moment, uncertainty rippling through their ranks. It was the break Earth had been waiting for. "This is our chance," Monroe said, his voice filled with determination. "Push forward. Take out their command ships." The Defender surged forward, cutting through the ranks of the alien fleet with precise, calculated strikes. The Earth fleet followed suit, flanking the enemy from both sides. The battle had become a symphony of destruction, ships exploding, lasers firing, and the intense, pulsating rhythm of war echoing across the void. Despite the tide shifting in their favor, Monroe couldn't shake the feeling that Zoreth had one final trick up his sleeve. It was too easy, too quick. They were winning, but there was still that gnawing sense of something more waiting to happen. "Captain Monroe, we've got another fleet coming in," Evans reported urgently. "It's big, too big." Monroe's gut twisted. The last thing they needed was another surprise. He turned to the navigation officer. "What's their ETA?" "At least 20 minutes," the officer replied. That wasn't enough time. They had to finish the battle quickly or face being overwhelmed again. "We don't have 20 minutes, Monroe muttered, his brow furrowed. "Prepare for a last push. We're ending this now." He turned back to Evans. "Send out the signal. Tell all ships to focus on the enemy's remaining command vessels. We hit them hard. No mercy." Evans relayed the message, and Earth's fleet responded in unison. The formation of ships tightened, weapons primed for a final strike. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Earth's forces were fighting like a single unified entity. The crew felt it, too. This was their moment, the culmination of all their sacrifices. The enemy was reeling. They had no choice but to retreat. Zoreth's ships began to break formation, their fire weakening as panic spread among the ranks. They couldn't withstand the full might of Earth's fleet. One by one, the alien ships began to fall. Then it happened. A massive energy surge shot from the heart of Zoreth's fleet. It was a last-ditch effort, an all-out assault designed to wipe out Earth's forces in a single devastating blow. Monroe's eyes widened as the power surged toward them. It was aimed directly at the Defender. "Brace for impact," he shouted, throwing himself into the seat. The blast hit with the force of a small star collapsing, the shockwave rattling the entire ship. The Defender was rocked to its core. For a moment, everything went dark. The ship shuddered violently, and alarms blared throughout the ship. "Report," Monroe demanded, his voice trained but steady. "We're alive," Evans said, her voice shaking with relief. "We've lost power to the outer engines, but we're holding steady." Monroe exhaled sharply. They had survived, but barely. The blast had been too close. It had taken everything they had to stay in the fight. The enemy fleet was breaking apart, retreating into the dark void. Zoreth's forces had been defeated, but the cost had been high. Earth had won, but the battle was far from over. Monroe looked out at the stars through the viewport, his heart heavy with the realization that the war had only just begun. They had survived the worst of it, but the future was uncertain. They had declared war on the wrong species, and now the consequences were far-reaching. But one thing was clear: Earth wasn't going down without a fight. The stars seemed to darken as Zoreth's fleet retreated into the distance. The Defender, though battered and scarred from the recent barrage, managed to keep steady in the aftermath. There was a brief moment of triumph among Earth's forces. Victory had been snatched from the jaws of defeat, but the taste of that victory was bitter. The battle wasn't over, and the war was far from won. Monroe stood on the bridge, staring out at the space before him. Despite the retreat of Zoreth's forces, the unsettling feeling of danger lingered in the air. There was a sense that the aliens were regrouping, preparing for something far worse. "We've done it, Captain," Evans said, her voice tinged with exhaustion, but tinged with a sense of pride. The enemy has been pushed back. The retreat is confirmed. Monroe's fingers drummed lightly on the command console, but his mind was elsewhere. Something didn't feel right. Victory had come at a heavy cost, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Zorath wasn't done yet. Suddenly, the alarms blared again. The ominous hum of danger filled the air. "What is it?" Monroe barked, his eyes snapping to Evans. "There's an anomaly," Evans said, her voice laced with confusion. "We're detecting multiple energy signatures. It's too many for one fleet." Monroe's eyes narrowed. He had a sinking feeling that this wasn't just another wave of retreating enemies. They had just won a major battle, but now it seemed they were about to face something far worse. "Get me a full scan now," Monroe ordered. The crew scrambled to their stations, and within seconds, the data began pouring in. What they saw on the screen sent a chill down everyone's spine. A massive fleet, far larger than Zorath's, was emerging from the far reaches of the galaxy. This wasn't a simple backup force. It was a fresh armada, a terrifying sight that sent ripples of fear through the crew. Zorath must have called for reinforcements, Monroe muttered under his breath. His worst fears were coming true. It was the kind of counterattack he had been expecting but had hoped he was wrong about. "Cap, we're outnumbered." "By a lot," Evans said, her voice strained with urgency. Monroe scanned the data. The numbers didn't lie. Earth's fleet, though powerful, was still recovering from the last battle. The new fleet was vast, almost endless, and they were closing in fast. "Are our allies still in position?" Monroe asked, his mind racing through the possibilities. "We've sent out distress signals," Evans replied. "But at this rate, we don't have much time before they arrive." Monroe's gaze shifted to the view screen. The massive enemy fleet was coming in waves, too numerous to count, and they were heading straight for Earth's defenses. Earth's forces, despite their hard-won victory, were in no shape to fight another battle of this magnitude. "We need a strategy now," Monroe said, his voice firm despite the rising tension. There was a long pause before one of the officers spoke up. "Captain, we have no choice. We can't win this without reinforcements. We have to withdraw and regroup." Monroe's heart pounded in his chest. It was the only logical option, but it felt like retreat, like admitting defeat. However, he knew that fighting now with a battered fleet would lead to annihilation. They couldn't afford to make that mistake again. "Prepare to retreat," Monroe said, a sense of resignation heavy in his voice. "We'll fall back to the asteroid belt. It's the only place we can regroup and plan our next move." As the Defender and the rest of Earth's fleet began their retreat, a grim silence fell over the bridge. The crew knew the truth. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. And this new, terrifying enemy would stop at nothing to crush them. Monroe stood silently at the helm, his gaze fixed on the approaching fleet. This was only the beginning. They had underestimated the power of their enemies, and now they would pay the price for that mistake. The war was far from over. The stars seemed to blink out as the Defender and the rest of Earth's fleet made their retreat, slipping into the shadows of the asteroid belt. It was a temporary haven, a place to lick their wounds and rebuild their strength. But Monroe knew that it wouldn't last forever. The enemy fleet was relentless, and they were coming. Fast. Monroe stood on the bridge, watching the asteroid field swirling past them, his hands clasped behind his back. The air was thick with tension, every crew member on edge. They had made it to the asteroid belt, but they hadn't won. At best, they had bought themselves some time. "We can't keep running forever," Monroe muttered, his voice low. "Zorath won't stop until we're wiped out." Evans approached, her face pale from exhaustion. "Captain, we've received word from the Allies. They're on their way, but it'll take time. We can't just sit here and wait." Monroe nodded, eyes narrowing. They needed a plan, and fast. The Defender and the rest of Earth's fleet were battered. There was no denying it. Their chances of survival were slim if they went head-to-head with the incoming fleet, especially without reinforcements. "We need to hit them first," Monroe said, a fire igniting in his chest. "If we can disable their lead ships, we might stand a chance. We can't wait around for backup. This is our only shot." Evans hesitated, glancing at the tactical readouts. "Sir, the enemy fleet is too powerful. Even if we launch a surprise attack, it'll be a suicide mission." Monroe's jaw tightened. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but there was no alternative. They couldn't let fear dictate their actions. Earth's survival depended on taking risks. There were no guarantees, but they had one advantage. Zorath's fleet was overconfident. They thought they had won, and that, Monroe believed, was their biggest weakness. "We strike fast. We strike hard. No hesitation," Monroe said, his voice steely. "If we go down fighting." As the fleet prepared for the daring counterattack, every crew member knew this was a gamble. The odds were stacked against them, but they had no choice. Earth's forces had proven their resilience time and time again. Now they had to prove it once more. The Defender powered up its weapons, the hum of the engines vibrating through the ship's steel bones. Monroe stood at the helm, his hand steady on the controls. His crew, loyal and determined, were ready to follow him to the ends of the galaxy. "We've trained for this moment," Monroe said, his eyes locking with Evans. "This is what we've been waiting for. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every living being in this galaxy." The countdown began. The asteroid belt's twisted rocks offered some cover, but it would only be a matter of time before Zorath's fleet caught up. The pressure was mounting. Monroe knew the attack had to be precise, hitting the enemy fleet's vulnerable spots before they could respond. "Steady, everyone," Monroe called out, his voice firm. "We go in fast, we hit them hard, and we get out before they even know what hit them." With a surge of power, the Defender and the fleet's remaining ships launched from the safety of the asteroid field. Their engines roared to life, and they shot out into space, heading straight for the oncoming enemy fleet. The battle was brutal. As the fleet closed in on the enemy, the stars seemed to explode around them. The Defender fired its weapons with precision, taking out enemy scouts and lead ships. But the enemy was far too numerous, and their retaliation was swift. Explosions ripped through space, and the Defender took hits, its hull groaning under the stress. "Shields at 30%, one of the officers shouted. "We can't take much more of this." Monroe's grip tightened on the controls. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they couldn't stop now. Not when they were so close. With a cry of determination, Monroe barked, "Focus fire on their command ships. We take them down, and the rest of the fleet will fall apart." The crew followed orders without question, launching everything they had at the enemy's command ships. The Defender maneuvered with precision, darting in and out of fire, landing devastating blows on their target. But as the battle raged on, the reality of their situation began to sink in. Their attacks were working, but the cost was mounting. One by one, Earth's ships were being destroyed. Monroe watched in horror as another ally ship erupted in a ball of flame, its debris scattering across the void. The Defender had taken another hit. Sparks flew from the consoles, and the lights flickered. Monroe knew that they didn't have much time left. "We can't keep this up," Evans cried out, looking at the damage reports. "We need to retreat." But Monroe shook his head. "Not yet. Not until we've won." The enemy fleet was slowly being whittled down, but their numbers were overwhelming. Earth's forces were exhausted, and every crew member knew it. This was the final battle. In that moment, a new wave of enemy ships appeared from the shadows of the asteroid belt, reinforcements, but it was too late. Earth's fleet had done the unthinkable. They had fought back against the odds, taken on an overwhelming force, and survived. As the battle came to a close, Monroe stood amidst the wreckage, his hands steady on the controls. The enemy's massive fleet had been defeated, and though Earth had lost much, they had won the war. The species that had once thought they could crush Earth's forces had now learned an invaluable lesson. Never underestimate humanity. Monroe looked out at the space ahead of him, his heart still pounding from the battle. They had done the impossible. The war was over, but their victory was only the beginning. The galaxy would now look at Earth in a new light, one filled with respect and fear.